Hey folks, welcome to a podcast about Catholic things. This is Eric, the ambassador of common sense, and the ambassador of nonsense is not with me today. Instead, we've got Jason, the ambassador of common nonsense.
How you doing, folks?
And today we are going to... so Danny's not here to do his beer of the week. Jason agreed to go ahead and do that.
I got a beer of the week.
Jason's always got a beer.
Actually, I want to set something straight here. Eric made some stereotype comments about people who drink these microbrews or fancy beers, as he likes to put them. I do enjoy. I'm not a geek. I'm pretty low on the scale of geekness, I guess. I guess geekness stands for smart. Is that what you meant by that?
No.
But, no, just
no.
Geeky.
You misunderstood what I said, I think. But
okay.
You just say what you think you got to say.
I'm just saying I do enjoy these beers that Eric said. I was sort of a poser in my, I guess, hobby of drinking these beers, and he comes to my house and I offer him a Bud Light because that's what he likes, but that doesn't mean I don't have in the fridge that I don't tell him about. But anyway, so today's beer is Dale's Pale Ale, and I had to get that just because it says Dale on it. We have a brother-in-law named Dale, one of the greatest guys alive. And I just had to get this beer and it's actually pretty good. Dale's Pale Ale by Oscar Blues Brewery. I don't even know where they're. I don't even know located. It's a mountain pale ale, actually, Indian pale ale. But anyway, that's today's beer.
So will people be able to find that somewhere? I mean,
I'm
that
sure
available at Kroger's?
Yeah, I found it at Kroger's.
Okay.
So yeah.
I assume that's what Danny shoots for, because why tell someone about a beer that can only be found in Cincinnati or Indianapolis or whatever? So,
well, I don't know if that's true or not. He finds these obscure stores. Half of the time, he'll tell me about a beer, and I'll look for it for weeks and never find it. So I really don't know about his.
Okay.
I normally get mine from Kroger.
He thinks that if it's at Kroger's, then it's available to everyone, but he doesn't know that Kroger's can localize their stock, you know?
Which I'm sure ours does. I mean, he's talked about Rheingeist, which is a local brewery in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I think they have a wider selection of Rheingeist than they do any other microbrew. So that just makes sense because they're local.
And things available to us probably are not available to Danny in Indianapolis or when he was in Michigan. So I don't think he realizes
or someone down in Florida or somewhere else. Right. Yep.
I guess what I'll do is put, I guess I should start putting links to the beer of the week on the website when we set up the podcast. That way, at least there's some kind of reference.
That's a good idea.
Okay, I'll try to find Dale Ale and
Dale's Pale Ale.
And I'll put a picture of Dale, probably the greatest guy who ever lived.
Right.
Okay, so this week we're going to talk about the Marriage Act, and that'll be the last time I use that euphemism. So I know these podcasts, you're listening to them, and you end one, and it automatically goes to the next one. So if someone doesn't want to explain things to their kids or doesn't want to hear all the words involved in the Marriage Act, here's your warning to go ahead and skip forward or shut it off or whatever, because we're probably going to say it a lot. So that's it.
This is not for kids. It's NFK.
Right. Because I plan to get pretty deep in as far as some of the problems in our culture today. There's a lot of problems, so we're going to talk about them. So today we're talking about sex, and I guess at the start of it we would because when you talk about sex, you got to talk about marriage, and the two are so tied together, despite the cultural intention to separate the two. They are
sex and marriage,
right.
Okay.
They're they're tied together, and they have to be tied together because that's how God created them. And it's not one of those things where, he created man and woman and then meant for them to do something, and then the fall came, so we had to have marriage clean it up or make it work better. That's not what happened. Marriage, from the beginning, was part of the plan for man and woman. And so I guess, the best place to start with this would be in Matthew, when they ask him about divorce, and they're asking him if they should divorce a wife for any cause, and he says, didn't you read that the one who made them at the beginning made them male and female? For this reason a man shall leave his mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined, let no man separate. And they said to him, why did Moses command us to give a certificate of dismissal and to divorce her? In other words, Moses allowed divorce in the laws. And he says to them, it was because you were so hard-hearted. But from the beginning, it was not so. And I think that's the key to everything. From the beginning, it was not so. Meaning, from the beginning, God had a certain intention. God had a design. And when we follow that design, it works better. I mean, you've heard the comparison before to, if I make a hammer and I mean for it to pound nails in, and I guess it's possible somebody could use it as a meat tenderizer, but that's not what it's meant for. It's meant to pound nails in. And that's when it's going to work the best, is when you use it to pound nails in. And you might also use a wrench to try to pound a nail in, but it's not going to work as well as a hammer will, because that's what it was designed for. And I think the same is true with sexuality. God created man and woman to go together. They were complementary from the start, and a man was meant to be with a woman and stay with that woman until they die, or at least until one of them dies. That was the design. And, that's a lot different from the sex of the animals. And I don't think we really have to make the case for that. You can't point to what a monkey does and say, see, it's natural to do this, because we're not monkey, despite the what they're teaching
opinion
in schools. Yeah,
Right.
What they're teaching in schools nowadays is just ridiculous. But we're not monkeys, because monkeys don't do certain things and do certain things, and so we're just not monkeys.
Well, we can overcome our desires. I mean, we have with reason. We have,
and to follow that reason to where it affects our decision. And the monkeys don't do that.
So why, when Jesus said it's because you were hard-hearted, what does that mean?
Well, the fact is, after the fall, the human race lost this grace. And I guess at this point you would call it sanctifying grace, is one of the things that the human race lost. And there was no real way for them to gain that back. Among other things, there are other graces as well that come with going to Mass, going to confession, and being married in the church. Marriage was not a sacrament then. From the time of the fall to the time of Jesus Christ, there was no sacrament of marriage. So right now, in the sacrament of marriage, having sex is actually I guess you would call it the practice of the sacrament. And it's actually an act that makes you holier when you do it the way you're supposed to do it. They didn't have that. So I would assume that's what he's talking about.
So what was the alternative? So if Moses said marriage is forever, what would have happened? What would society be like for the Jews? For what would
you mean?
What would be the alternative? Do they kill the wives instead of divorce? You know what I mean? Why?
Okay, so if Moses says, marriage is forever, you cannot get a divorce. I think that if you're talking about a group of people who have who do not have the grace it takes to make a marriage work the way it's supposed to work, I would say you would probably see a lot of problems. Murder. I mean, if you decide you want another wife, or if your wife is doing something that, isn't good, that might give you reason to put her away, then I imagine that could be one of the problems.
Right.
But how do you say
choice.
something like that? I mean, it was that way. That's all we know.
Huh. Anyway, go on. That was sort of a tangent. I was just
I never
curious.
even thought of that. I mean, I have never even considered that question. If Moses had not said this, but obviously, of course, it's not like Moses was infallible when he made these laws and stuff. And
Right.
I don't know how the church teaches on that. If there was definitely divine inspiration when he wrote the laws, or if this is just him who's a smart guy and is close to God and he's a holy guy and he decides this is what we're going to do. I don't know if there is a teaching on that, but I imagine because of the hardness of their hearts, it might have created certain problems if divorce was not allowed. Anyway, he did allow it, and when Jesus comes along, it's, because marriage is given the sacramental nature, we do away with divorce. You can't get a divorce anymore. So that's it. But aside from the nature of marriage, it tells us a lot about the nature of sex. And I guess between that and just human nature and what we see in society today, I think you can tell a lot about sex. And I think there's a huge number of problems in our culture today that could be solved just by following the Christian way, or actually specifically the Catholic way of doing things, especially sex. And I guess the first one I wanted to talk about is culturally, some of the problems that are creeping up, and some of the mistakes that people are making right now, and how that's playing out. I think one of the ones that always kind of got on my nerves and never really made any sense to me is that fallacy that sex is unimportant. I remember there was a Hustler billboard here in Cincinnati, and it had a picture of two girls, and it just said, "It's just sex." And I mean, just sex, as if it's not some billion-dollar industry that drives so many people, It's just
or
sex.
As if it's not something that has ruined nations in the past, or
right.
I mean, it's ruined. I mean, to say it's ruined families that's nothing. It's ruined entire nations in the past. It's ruined religions. I mean, think about it. It's It's just
how many Christian religions had a certain
that's my
way
point.
of
it's caused schisms in the Catholic Church. I mean,
going back to sex. I think St. Thomas Aquinas calls it the how did he phrase this? I didn't think of this until just now, but he calls it the most enjoyable of the passion. This is Thomas Aquinas, who was a monk. I mean, I don't know how he would know that, but because he was celibate. But he calls it. I think his words are the most enjoyable of passion, and he describes something. He calls it folly, and from what I can gather from the text, and this is in the Summa, he's talking about the way a man will maybe think a certain way, and it'll be logical and reasonable, and then because of his passions, purposely change the way he's thinking to where it's not reasonable anymore, possibly to justify certain things,
I mean, is it could you say the passion itself is what it can make something unreasonable seem reasonable? Is that
right?
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And so he specifically says lust is chiefly what causes. So, you go through your life and you're like, well, a man should not sleep around on his wife, just period. That's your belief. And then maybe years later, you've got a wife who, for whatever reason, you're just not happy with her for some reason or other. And then there's this woman at the office who you are happy with, and somehow you get yourself to think that it's okay in your case. And I think, you do these somersaults, these logical somersaults, and that's how you come to the conclusion that it's okay for you. And that's the folly I think he's talking about. And he says this comes chiefly through lust above all the other passion. The idea that it's not that big a deal when it's the driving force in so many things. It's the driving force in most advertising. It's the driving force in, I mean, if I've heard, I don't know, I never checked into this, but I have heard that the first industry to actually make money online was the pornography industry, which isn't too hard to believe. And it's still probably one of the biggest ones.
I don't know if that's true or not, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised if that is true. I mean, that's absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I know, I can see what you're saying. I mean, is like hunger a passion? I don't know. Is hunger a passion?
It could be to a certain extent, except that brings us to the next folly, which is that sex is necessary, which is kind of, it's weird because that contradicts the first fallacy. You want to say,
right.
It's just sex. It's not a big deal. And then in the next sentence, a man has to have sex. You see how those two don't go together. But I'll hear people argue those same 2 points.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah.
So,
yeah, you're right.
People need sex.
Yeah, he has to. It's not a big deal, but you absolutely you can't expect someone not to have it. Like it's a necessity. Yep. Okay. I see what. Yeah.
Except
that's
these
what our
priests,
kids are taught.
Yeah. These priests who are celibate, that's impossible. We know they're not celibate. That's the way our culture thinks nowadays.
Yep.
That's not true. And if you if you bring up to other men, well, okay, you were in the military. If you were to pose the idea that no, I do not masturbate, you're a liar, and they would all say you're a liar. And it's like there's this notion among men that if you don't, that every man masturbates no matter what.
Right. And and it's not, there isn't anything to be shamed about there. You don't have to feel shame for doing it. You're right. That's what you're told. And from a very early age. I mean,
right. Earlier. I mean, they're teaching it in schools, for heaven's sake.
Christians, well, even parents are talking to their children about it as if you don't have to be ashamed of it. It's what everybody does. Even Christians, even some Catholics. I mean, it's
because
that is
the word masturbate is not in the Bible, so you can't call it a sin. And it's like, well, you can first of all, but it's kind of crazy the way culturally this is getting mixed up. And the problems that these two ideas are causing. First, when we throw around sex as if it's not a big deal, it destroys a lot of marriages. And when you destroy marriages, you destroy children.
Families, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the family, everything is based on the family. And when the family falls apart, which it does often because of sex, then you've got a whole other generation here of people who had been raised without fathers or without mothers who are causing their own little sets of problems. I think a lot of the problems I think a big part of the drug problem right now is because of this.
How so? What do you mean?
We've got people, we're not taught some of the very basic of get up in the morning, deal with your life, do the things you have to, and go to work, come home, separate the two. I don't think kids are taught how to be content in life. And I think being taught that generally would come from a father.
Right.
Because the children see him.
Who learned it from his father.
Right. And I mean, they see this because they see him on the outside and then they see him on the inside. And they generally see like the two different modes of operation. And they see that happiness can be there on both ends, even though you have bad days, and they learn how to handle bad days. But these are some of the things that just aren't taught anymore. So look, when you've got let's face it, you've got like soccer moms nowadays who would do anything to keep their kids from feeling any discomfort, you know? I mean,
they call them helicopter moms.
Yeah. Look what kind of problems it's creating with these kids these snowflake generation, where they're unable to deal with any kind of disappointment or bumps in the road. And I think this is why we have such a big drug problem right now.
Well, it's a generation of narcissists.
Yeah.
And the drugs themselves are an easy way to escape that. I don't know. I don't know what the right term is.
Well, any kind of discomfort,
narcissism. Well, yeah, they don't understand why they're not being pampered. So at that very second, they can do drugs and they forget about it temporarily. You know,
right.
I believe it stems back to narcissism.
Right.
In fact, I know a handful, I personally druggies, young people and people my age that even some of our relatives, that if you really look at their lives, they were pampered, not necessarily pampered, might not be the right word, but they were constantly what's the word?
It's like they were not permitted to experience failure and discomfort, and
or they weren't forced to
deal with challenges.
Deal with challenges. Yeah, exactly. And they escaped to drugs.
Yeah. But that's kind of happening with or without the problem that I'm talking about as well. I'm just saying that it generally takes a man to help kids go through that. You know, I think a man is better at helping children go through discomfort and failure and success without turning to things like drugs. And a big reason that divorce is so bad nowadays is because of the cultural attitude towards sex. First of all, that it's not a big deal. And then secondly, that it's absolutely necessary, which the two contradict each other. And these are just cultural problems that are coming about. But, in personal relationships, it gets even worse. One of the, I think another fallacy that's out there is that sex should always be exciting, or should always be as exciting as the day you get married.
That's what I was going to say. Just say for instance, just between a married couple, those who we say are, if you say it's not a big deal, and you also say it's necessary, you have to do it. Between a married couple, both of those are sort of okay, right? I mean, neither of those are problems within a marriage. So now what you're getting into now, that could be a that's more of a problem. So go on. I just wanted to say, if you're married, it's okay if you think sex is not a big deal, and it's okay if you think, or if you're living a married life, properly. Right. It's okay if you think you have to have it, or your man has to have it, but what I guess talk about is a bigger problem.
In terms of the marriage, you might actually say it's necessary.
Well,
sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
I don't think you could say it's unimportant, because it still drives a lot. I mean, look, if you're married, then I don't know of any married men who have not fought with their wives about sex at some point or another. It's just, it's a common fight. And, that's a general rule. There's that joke about, that food that, you can give women that will cause them to never have a sexual appetite again. Wedding cake.
Wedding cake.
I had heard that like when I was 15, and I really didn't understand it. And then someone brought it up to mind again when I was like 30, and I thought, oh, yeah. That's not a rule for everyone, but it is common that a man would have a bigger appetite than a woman.
Right. It's common, but at the same time, I'm going to propose that it's also rare that both male and female in a marriage, both of them are I guess enter into that carnal union with the right mindset that the church expects us to.
Right.
to have. You know what I mean? I think that's very rare.
It's becoming more and more rare. Yeah. Well, I guess it's been
even,
rare for
even
a long
between
time.
that's what I mean. Even between practicing Catholics, I think it's rare for both people to really grasp what it is God created here. But,
Right.
So,
and I mean, see, we're taking for granted that our audience knows certain things. And, I don't know, maybe we shouldn't. But, for example, contraception. We know contraception is a sin. Not just a sin, it's a mortal sin. And I think most of the people who have downloaded our podcast know that.
I would think so, but I guess we shouldn't in that 100%. I mean, and frankly, you were talking about major issues in society, and I believe it really all starts with contraception. Frankly, I believe that's our single most. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know how to say it. I think that's the biggest problem in our society, or at least when our biggest problems started. That's when it all started.
Well,
is when Christians decided contraception was okay.
Before you were talking about the fact that there are huge religious disruptions, or it actually sex is actually destroying religions, and you could go right back to that because you've got this giant group of people who are practicing this faith or that faith, and at one time they all thought contraception was a sin, and then all of a sudden, like within a 10-year span, everybody thinks different, and the whole religion shifts. And then once that happened, it kind of opened the door for a lot of other shifts, like homosexuality.
It falls apart.
The whole thing just kind of withers. That's a good way of saying it. They do wither, and they seem to get worse and worse until another new religion pops up. And I don't know, but that is, that also goes back to one of the major fallacies in our society, is that sex should somehow be removed from natural consequences. You know, I mean, you combine that with that it always has to be exciting, and then you remove the natural consequences, and you've got kind of a recipe there for disaster. I remember reading a book by Chesterton who was touching on contraception, and he said that when you've got a society that accepts sex without babies, you're going to end up with a society that accepts babies without sex. And that's widely accepted nowadays.
And lo and behold.
I mean, it started with women, doing things like in vitro fertilization, which, by the way, is also a mortal sin. And then it led to single women suddenly deciding they want to have a baby, but they don't want to have a relationship with a man, which is how God designed the whole thing. And then now you've got two men or two women who want to have a baby, even though it's physically impossible for them to, and it's causing all kinds of problems.
It's not how things were designed, and people will make arguments like it can work. They'll point to incidences where oh, look, this gay couple raised this person and they're doing well financially and morally, they're great people, but regardless, it isn't how it was designed, and it's going to fail more often than not. You can you can point to where maybe a monkey maybe gets along with a wolf in the woods for one time, but more often than not, they're going to be fighting each other or eating each other.
One of them's going to eat the other eventually. But
right, and it's just not designed. We're not designed for that.
One of the, when I hear arguments like that, I mean, look, that argument only works for someone who is not Catholic and is generally not even Christian.
Right.
I mean, if an atheist wants to make that argument, then you're looking at a whole different set of principles that you got to point out to show how wrong the argument is. But for a Catholic, look, if you're Catholic, then you accept the fact that we get to heaven by following Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ has certain laws, And one of them is that a man and a man cannot be married and cannot have sex together. So, if you've got a man and a man who are having sex together, without passing some kind of judgment on them personally, because we don't know where their soul is or where their brain is or anything else, they are committing mortal sins, and they are bound toward hell. Now, they raise a kid who believes it's okay for that to happen, and who knows where else that kid's going to go off. Maybe he's a nice guy, and maybe he makes money in life, but that doesn't mean he's going to get to heaven. And so
which is all that matters in reality.
Right. And if you're a Catholic, you just can't make that argument, because that whole family is bound to hell if something doesn't change. But
well, I guess going back to what you, I guess we're sort of getting off topic a little bit. That's sort of going down. So go back to what you were talking about. We talked about the fallacies, and the third fallacy. You said, what was the third one?
No, I said, well, I had two. Sex should always have excitement in it, and then sex should be removed from natural consequences.
Well, no, you didn't talk about excitement. You talked about how it's no big deal, but it's necessary, and then you started to talk about excitement when I interrupted.
Right. Okay. So you've got, look, let's follow the order that God meant for man and woman. We start out young, maybe. I mean, we start getting urges when we're 12, maybe a little bit younger. They get really strong around 15, 16, really powerful around then. And that used to be the age that people would get married. Nowadays, we make them wait until they're 18, because a 15-year-old in today's society could not raise a family. So you got to wait now.
Really, generally, society would frown upon it if you're younger than 25 nowadays.
Yeah, I know. Anyway. It's getting ridiculous.
Right.
So you turn 18.
And they blame young marriage. They blame divorce on young marriage. Sorry to interrupt you again, but it's so stupid. These people say, oh, well, they always get to it. They don't look at contraception or not following the rules the Catholic Church has put in place. They blame their age. So they got to go older and older so that they don't get divorced. And most of them still end up getting divorced. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Then you got 80-year-old people who are finally ready to get married, and it's like, dude, I mean, I don't know. Look, when you're 18 years old, and when you're in that range from 18 to, say, early 20s, your body's in tip-top shape, and we got to face certain facts. That's the time at which it's easiest for you to attract a mate, you know?
Right.
I mean, you're physically able, both men and women. You're better than you're ever going to look,
and you're most motivated too.
Right? Your drive is for men motivated. Anyway.
Yeah. Right.
I'm not even going to speak for women, because I don't know, but I know for men, you're very driven. You know, you want that girl, and so that's when it usually happens, and that's kind of when God meant for it to happen. That's when the drive is there the most. And so you get married. Now, you know, if you're not using contraception, there are going to be periods where you don't have sex. I mean, it might be if you're doing natural family planning, it might be because she had a baby and she can't have sex for a little while because she just had a baby, you know? So there's going to be these periods of sexual dryness. If that happens naturally, and the man does what he's supposed to do, as in he just kind of deals with it, offers it up, guess what happens? The excitement is there again.
It builds. It builds back up.
It gets huge. So, because you do things like, you know, you go through periods where it's like, no, we can't have sex, but maybe there's some foreplay, and it gets to be like a volcano, you know?
Right. Yeah, just like you're a teenager.
Mm-hmm. So, but if you're practicing birth control, you never go through those periods where you don't have sex. Or at least you don't do it out of necessity. If you do it, it's probably because of a fight or something like that, you know?
Or boredom.
Yeah. But that's another thing.
And you get bored quickly in that kind of a relationship.
Right. And then the society's kind of put this expectation on both the man and the woman that it should be exciting. So you got to do something else, you know? You got to add to your sex life something like, and then you get into, I mean, I guess some things are not sinful, you know, like, you know, sex toys or whatever. Although I would submit that for a man, they don't really, it's not like they make or break it. You know what I mean? They don't matter that much to a man.
No, but I believe, and this is speculation on my part. This isn't something I've experienced or anything, but just you know, talking to guys and being, I have to be around a lot of guys for work and things, but I believe that it's the fact that their female is excited for once, you know what I mean, for a change,
right?
And that's where that's where men enjoy the toys, is actually getting their female excited again. They forgot what it was like when they were 18 because, you know, for the last 10 years they've been using contraception and they got bored quickly, you know?
Right? And it's it takes the pressure off men,
right? Yep.
Which is another problem. If it takes the pressure off men to be more, aware of his wife's needs, where it's like, I can take care of my wife with this toy real quickly, then I can focus on myself, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's ultimately selfish.
Yeah. So another thing that happens, okay, a man and a woman get married, they're having sex without contraception. Even without contraception, where you go through these ebbs and flows and there are periods of dryness, I mean, things do become routine. It's part of marriage life. It's part of every life. You build routines around yourself throughout your whole life. You get into a routine for work. You get up in the morning, you know, you have to be at the office by a certain time. You're expected to do certain things, and those things become routine. And then you go home, and maybe dinner's there, or you make dinner, or whatever's going on. And then when you bring children into it, it's even more routine because these kids need schedules, and they got to do this every day, and you got to do that for them every day. But there's no reason to think that your sex life shouldn't do that.
Right.
And I think we've built the expectation that it shouldn't. And it's like it's supposed to be exciting all the time, or if it's not exciting enough, then you need to do something to break the routine. I would submit that no, you don't. I think if you follow the natural law, if you follow God's law, that will happen. You will get ups and downs without it becoming so routine over a period of, say, 10 years that you're absolutely bored with it. But
right. That's hard to. It isn't as if you have statistics there you can point to point that out. You know what I mean? That's again that's just based on knowing God has a plan. You know what I mean? Knowing the genius of God's creation, I guess. And I guess certainly that's the way it's going to be if you just trust in God.
And the thing, well, the sad part is that someone who uses contraception, if you tried to explain that to, they would not get it. And I think that's the folly that we were talking about earlier that Thomas Aquinas mentioned. I think the idea of accepting the natural order of sex and how it happens and what the consequences of sex are, it loses its, you don't find that reasonable because of the passion that's involved there. And it's like, what? Go without sex? No way. Have a baby every time I have sex? No way. Taking that chance, yeah. And then maybe sometimes if it's like, we can't have a baby right now, well, then you can not have sex. And that idea, that's insanity to someone who has already given in to the cultural idea of separating sex from the natural consequence.
Right. Yeah.
The temptation for these things mostly come from the outside. And I think I don't see a whole lot of ways to solve some of these problems. For example, pornography. I mean, you've got to have a solid will to not just pornography, but just there's pictures of women everywhere, and sex is on every commercial you look at nowadays.
Well, and every show is soft porn now. I mean, you almost can't watch TV if you want to avoid it.
Right. And so the imagery that is constantly pushed at you causes you to have less excitement for your wife. And the more you give into it, the less excited by your wife you'll be. And if you can find a way to get control of it, as in you don't allow your mind to wander down that lane, it will help you. It'll help you see your wife as the answer to your sexual drive throughout your whole lives.
Well, yeah, it'll renew what you thought when you met her. Or if you don't ever go down that road, you'll never lose it.
Right. So, I mean, look, again, we get married when we're young, when our bodies are healthy and we look good. And then, let's face it, we lose that attractiveness over time. Men do and women do. I think it's harder on women because aside from getting older, they're having babies, and it puts a toll on women, you know? And,
well, yeah.
And in, a society today, it's like, I'm sure that women feel it's unfair, because it's like, all right, I'm here with you, I'm having your baby, and then you're looking at all these pictures of these women and possibly thinking of them certain ways. How can I compete with that? And I think if you allow yourself to think about those things too much, if you go down that road of looking at pornography and masturbating, or looking at pornography just to help you have relations with your wife, it's going to kill the natural drive that you have, the natural attraction you have for your wife. But that attraction will stay there if you follow God's law, because God made us a certain way, and this is what he taught when he says from the beginning it was not so. He made us so that we form habits, and those habits actually become physical parts of our brains. Neural pathways are formed, and you get used to doing things a certain way, so that if you are, say, aroused for some reason, just because you're feeling frisky that day, the outlet for that is always the same thing. And that would be your wife. And so your wife, even though she's much older and has changed, and she's got wrinkles where she used to have smooth skin, your brain has learned that this is the object of your affection.
And you're happy with it.
Right.
That's what you want. That's what you want. Given the scenario, that is. That
was God's design. It's brilliant. Because if you marry one woman, stay with that one woman, and you're faithful throughout your life, you're always happy with that one woman.
Yep.
When you turn from that woman, you're bringing unhappiness into the marriage. Not just for her, but for yourself. You're no longer happy with what you have. That's the danger that pornography brings, and that's the danger that these television shows are bringing to marriages. And other than just don't ever watch TV, I don't see too much way around this, other than men have to have self-control and have to shut their eyes from that when it's necessary. I mean, when you're looking at something, whether you find it attractive, and if you find it attractive that way, you've got to look away or distract yourself for a minute, for a couple seconds, until that's over, and then you can go back to doing what you're doing.
Well, you got to do that, and my gosh, protect your children from it. That's the hard part. That's what today's parents are faced with, and unfortunately, not a whole lot of parents even care. But the ones who do care they're faced with such a battle.
And you feel like it's a losing battle. You feel powerless.
Between cell phones and TV and internet, I mean, my gosh.
It's just everywhere.
But I'm like a broken record. I pound it into their head. My biggest message to them, the boys and the girls, is you can't unlearn this stuff. You can't undo the damage this stuff does. So just stay away from it. Just do whatever you can to stay away from me. Like, I just pounded into it.
Yeah, right. I mean, that is a big thing. I mean, when you're 20 years old, sometimes you think about things that happen. I still think about things that I've seen when I was a teenager, and I'm 40-something, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes the memory remains strong. Sometimes it gets weaker and you forget. But you're right. Once it's in your brain, it's in your brain. And you can't...
And going back to your devil podcasts, he knows what to do with it. You know?
Right.
I mean,
if the devil can call up images, then that's always going to be source of temptation for you now. If you had never seen it, it would never be a source of temptation. The images of other women is a threat to every marriage, and I think it's one that men have to take seriously. You know, something that a lot of people don't like to talk about, and I think this stems from the fact that more often than not, if there's a lack of sex, it's because the woman is not wanting to do it. And so people will avoid the fact that the Bible does say that you should have sex.
Right.
It is part of the marriage. I mean,
right.
I think I can't even remember where it is. There is a time where you should refrain for a while, but then it specifies always come back together again. But, you know, I guess you get into tricky situations. For example, a man is not following the law. He's not doing what he's supposed to do. Maybe he's looking at pornography, or he insists on wearing a condom because he doesn't want to have baby. Now, what's a woman supposed to do? She is not obligated to not have sex with. And then the question comes up, can she not have sex with them? Here's where society... Sure. Well, I'm trying to think of a way to say this because it's not a popular idea. The fact that a woman does... It used to be that women thought sex is one of their duties. They have to fulfill their husbands.
You mean basically that they have to, I guess...
Put out.
Like, you're talking about like Ephesians, like basically...
Well... Kind of.
They have to subside. They have to be obedient to their husbands. Yeah. Is that what submit to their husbands? What did Paul say? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, kind of in a sense, but I mean, if you're talking about submission in the bedroom, I mean, if you're saying to your wife you have to submit and have sex with me, then I would say you've got other problems. Who the heck would want that kind of sex anyway? You know what I mean?
Well, there's some weird people out there. But
I guess so. But fine, I'll spread my legs. But it's like, how would any man enjoy that to where he knows that the woman is not enjoying it? Why would that even come into question? But when you've got a situation where a woman has said, I'm not going to have sex until you do X, Y, or Z, I think that could be a huge problem. And I guess you could say it's out of submission that she should. I would just say that him looking at pornography is destroying the natural attraction that he feels for her. Right. There's an order to this, and looking at pornography destroys that. Withholding sex also destroys it. Right. And that kind of a sin would be just as serious as looking at pornography. In other words, it is a mortal sin. And I don't mean those cases where it's like, come on, I got a headache. Or when you got a guy who expects it every night, whereas I think the national average is 2 or 3 times a week. But, you know, you got a woman who maybe wants it once a week and a guy who wants it every night. Obviously, you got to come to some kind of... But when a woman has decided, or a man has decided, we're not going to do it anymore, that is a mortal sin.
Yeah.
Unless both people agree, we're not going to have sex anymore. But I mean, if a man and a woman has decided we're going to live as brother and sister for the rest of our lives, that's fine. But if they've decided we're going to do it for a year, I would say that's dangerous to the marriage for the reasons I just pointed out. For the same reason a man shouldn't look at pornography, because Well, then again, I mean, I guess you could still keep that flame alive with like foreplay and stuff like that, but you're not doing that if you're living as brother and sister, you know. But
right.
It's dangerous to the marriage, and it ruins the marriage, or at least the romantic aspect of the marriage, by not having sex. And for that reason, again, the word submission that's the wrong word there, because it's like men don't really want their wives to submit to them, and that would be weird. But at the same token, to say, no, I'm not going to give you this anymore, that would, and it would be part of that sin where a woman has to submit to her husband. And that is in the Bible. I'm sorry, it's there. I mean, I've heard people dance around it, but it's still there.
Right.
I think that's all I've got on the subject. I guess.
Yeah, that subject can branch into so many different directions. That's not an easy topic to cover.
We could do that we could talk about we could cover the topic every podcast for a whole year and not run out of things to say about it. I just wanted to address some of the cultural lies that are out there that are affecting Catholic marriages.
Well, I think to sum it up, Catholics just the very basics. No, you can't use contraception, regardless of how scary or hard it is. You can't use contraception. Stay away from pornography. You know, just a few basic things can make marriages so much better.
Right.
And pray together. My gosh.
There is one thing. Okay, when I ran a website where I had a little FAQ about sex, and people would often write questions because they would find that on the website and then ask me. And the question that, even though it was already addressed in the FAQ, they would still ask this question. Two of them, actually. Number one, if you can die by getting pregnant, is contraception okay? And the answer is no.
Right.
I mean, if the although I don't know if there are too many conditions that exist that a woman would die if she got pregnant. But
they told my wife there's a very, very good chance of tubular pregnancy if she were to get pregnant. They told her there's only a 5% chance that she can get pregnant, and there's a 95% chance of that being a tubular pregnant.
Well, you ran those odds out, haven't you?
Yep, 5 kids later. Yeah. But that's so they had her scared to death, at one point. Yeah. Although she's not someone to get very scared of things, but
right.
That is so they will tell women, like, hey, you should get your tubes tied or whatever, because there's a good chance you're going to have a tubular pregnancy and die if you get pregnant.
Right.
They will tell women.
Yeah, and they tell women a lot of things. Like our brother has a set of twins. His wife was told, one twin is going to kill the other, so you may as well abort one now. Or one of them's going to die, or they'll both kill you. And she didn't do any of that, and she's got 2 boys, and they're fine. Right. I mean, you hear those stories all the time. It's incredible that doctors. I don't want to say, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to pass judgment and say you're using scare tactics. But
I think it's probably more of a CYA type thing. You know what I mean? I think it's, hey, I've seen someone with this condition and here's what happened. Or there's, you know what I mean? I think it's more of just covering their bases. I agree with you. I'm not going to judge the doctor for saying it, but they do seem to say it an awful lot.
Yeah. The other question is, my periods are too frequent or too bloody, and I'm taking medicine to stop the periods. Can I still have sex? The answer is yes.
Birth control medicine.
Right.
Birth control medicine. Yeah.
Which are also abortifacient.
A lot of them.
But the answer is yes, you could still have sex. Right. Because you're not intentionally frustrating the natural process of
well, no, that isn't the end. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's not why you're doing it.
You're not trying to keep conception from happening. You're just trying to regulate your body, and maybe that's a side effect.
Right.
So those are the two questions. I mean, it was like I would get one every day. One of those two questions.
Same two questions.
Yeah. And they were both addressed in the fact, but, I thought that seems to be an important
some people
one
probably see two or
about.
three, right?
Well, then they go to confession, and the priest says, no, it's all right, I mean...
That's the worst part, is you have so many priests out there who are not, I don't want to say I don't want to say they're intentionally giving wrong information, but they're poorly catechized.
Yeah.
I've had a priest tell me it's okay to use contraception. You know, like, hey, you did your part. You have some kids. It's okay to use contraception now. Like, I've had a priest tell me that, a Catholic priest.
Yeah, we were going to a counselor who was supposed to be a Catholic counselor, and he's saying, he's bringing up contraception. I'm like, well, you're Catholic. You shouldn't be. But you also know that I'm Catholic. Well, the church allows. No, the church doesn't allow. Kept going on about.
I love that. Yeah, the church allows that.
And then he said, the church says follow your conscience. And I'm like, well, finally, the only way I got him to shut up about it is said, well, if I follow my conscience, I wouldn't do it because I follow the church teaching, and that's where my conscience is. He's like, oh, all right. But it's incredible the Catholic identity that has withered and died in our culture today. It's sad.
Yeah.
Because everybody knew that Catholics had
with
big families at one time, That was a Catholic thing. Catholics have big families. Now Muslims have big families, not Catholics.
Yep.
Or welfare recipients.
Started with contraception.
Yeah.
I believe that was the beginning of our demise right there.
Yeah.
Widespread contraception.
Well, I think that unless you have any questions or things you think we should say.
I think that's good for now. We can.
Okay.
I think this is a topic you'll revisit in many ways over the years.
And it has.
I think that's a good.
I mean, it creeps up in the other podcasts, especially, we're doing, it's like the subject of abortion, which creeps up almost every single podcast because it's such a terrible thing. And it's one of those, it's in your life, it's in everyone's life, and you got to address them.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good overview.
All right. Current events. I've got a few things.
I was sent a couple things from the land of nonsense.
Okay, so you're going to go over nonsense stuff.
When you're done.
Okay.
I'll go over a couple of them.
All right. I do want to mention something about current events. See, there are a lot of things happening in the church right now that I don't go over in current events. Like I guess the bishops just got a letter from a group of theologians pointing out, I think, 7 different ways that Pope Francis is teaching heresy. And, I mean, these things are big deals for Catholics. But it's not the kind of podcast that I know that it's there, and I sometimes mention these things, but I don't really put them in current events because the point of this podcast was, what is the Catholic understanding of all the things that we all go through every day? What is the Catholic understanding of the normal parts of life and of the world? So the current events, I generally just do the worldly Catholic or current events. I don't really get into stuff about the church. There's a whole lot of crap going on in the church right now that I probably should discuss, but I don't have the energy to even think about it. It's so discouraging.
It's discouraging, and it can even be scary sometimes. But that's the beautiful part of Catholicism. You don't really have to worry about it. We don't have to worry. I mean, things can get rocky.
Yeah.
But we have we have the truth. We have Jesus Christ. We have the truth, and that's all that matters. And while you'll get goofy popes here and there, and I guess it can get. I guess when you have a heretic, that can get a little scary, especially.
Yeah.
When he starts getting to the point where he's talking about teachings, but at the same time, again, I feel like you can feel comfort in having faith that the Holy Spirit will prevail.
Yeah, Jesus did promise that he would protect us from error, in the church. Or at least that's our understanding of his words. So we have to just take comfort in that. But we should at least pay attention to it. And again, I'm not going to get into all this stuff because I just can't stand to talk about it. But one of the podcasts, I'm going to link to it. I've linked to it before once, and I'm going to link to it again. I think the guy's name is Taylor Marshall. He's got a pretty good podcast. Yeah. He covers all this stuff in depth, and it's just, that's not what kind of podcast this is, and that's why I don't talk about it in current events.
Let them talk about it.
Instead, I'm going to talk about the United Nations Global Assessment Report on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services has decided to report that due to human activity, the Earth's biodiversity has suffered a catastrophic decline that is unprecedented in human history. You know, unprecedented in human history. I'm not sure what they're talking about, but are they talking about like within the past 10 years or within the past 200 years?
I don't know. So what you're saying is the biodiversity is suffering? That's the...
Yeah.
So I take that to mean like the number of species? Is that how they...
I guess. Or the...
Like, so is...
the amount of the different numbers of species. See, I don't know what they're talking about, because, you know, you look at when we came to America, the white man came to America, there were buffalo everywhere, and they're pretty much gone now.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that you're talking about biodiversity there, that's a huge one. But it's, I'm not going to say it's a good thing what we did. I don't think we should have killed all the buffalo. Although, I mean, we happened to save some, and we got them going again in certain areas, and that's great. I think it would be better if we had more of them, and I certainly don't think we should have hunted them down the way we did. But is America's ecosystem that bad off now? You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean,
right.
So what? So we don't have. Let's say we did lose the buffalo. So what?
Right, it'd be a tragedy, but we could lose some cows in Yellowstone and let the wolves hunt them. Yeah, no,
right.
I see what you're saying. It's I still don't know what they mean that it's suffering. What does that mean that biodiversity suffering?
Suffered a catastrophic. I mean,
how do they measure that?
What do they want exactly? What do they? You know, the left is always doing that. They pull up these problems. Half the problems are made up, but they never say this is how to fix it. Or if they do say this is how, it's ridiculous things that can't be done. All right, from here on in, no more having babies. It's like, well, no, we're not going to do that.
That's what we'll be faced with.
And I bet 100. I'd bet my right arm that that's what this I didn't read the document because I'm not going to read garbage like this, but I'll bet that's what it points to is we need to have less babies. We need to have less people. Yeah, it's always overpopulation. But
who is it on Fox News? Walter? I don't know. One of the guys on Fox News. He went through all the past liberal warnings. You know. When they warned, you know, back in the 60s or 70s, they warned the Earth was cooling and it was going to be another ice age by the year 1980. And then they you know, it was funny. He had the headlines and they were all laid out. And every 10 to 15 years it changes.
Well, I don't know if anyone on Fox News did it, but that was a YouTuber who's pretty good. You know what? I'm going to link to that also on the website.
I don't know what you're talking about, but this was
Fox
News.
Because you got a video sent to, or at least our sister sent you a video.
Oh, is that one of the ones that she sent? I'm about 4 behind.
Oh, okay.
I have not. I'm about 4 behind.
Well,
so
let's not tell her
that.
She'll get pissed.
Don't tell her that. But I'm 4 behind on her videos. But no, this was Fox. I'm certain.
Okay.
This was like the 5 or whatever.
Okay.
Anyway, go ahead.
Well, it's crazy the number of the claims that they made and how wrong they've been over and over and over again, and people still listen to them.
Time.
I mean, the millennials take these people as gospel.
Oh,
it's insane. So, did you see Tiger Woods get the Medal of Freedom?
Yeah,
from Trump.
Yeah.
I thought it was good.
Trump. Yeah.
The left is very
that
angry.
was pretty cool. How come?
I don't know. Oh, well, because Trump and Tiger Woods were friends. Yeah. They don't think he should.
Okay. Yeah. So now Tiger Woods is nothing but a racist, bigot, loser.
Well, I guess they would call him an Uncle Tom or something.
Okay. Oh, because he's black. Yeah.
And then they're also saying that this was all just this was all stupid because Donald Trump and Tiger Woods were friends before he was even president. So.
So it doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, as if he didn't overcome 10 years of surgeries and had some, drug addiction problems and some other things going on, and he didn't overcome that and make a comeback.
Right. Right. He's remarkable. He's one of the best athletes that ever played the game, and who knows, he's not done. He may end up being the best athlete. I mean, he's among the top 5 in history.
See, I think...
it's just because Trump because they were friends being...
Yeah. I think we've mentioned on the podcast before, I don't pay attention to golf. Danny doesn't pay attention to golf. Jason pays a little bit more attention to golf than we do. So it probably means more to him than me. But,
yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. It was exciting, but I don't sit and watch golf. I
have heard that some people were
if I'm
in
not
tears
doing anything else
when he won that thing a couple weeks ago. I don't even know what it's called. What did he win?
The Masters.
Yeah. When he won that, people were crying over that, who are sports fans and stuff. But the left is mad that he accepted. So I don't know.
I had tickets to the Masters.
Did you? Did you go?
I had tickets. Yeah. No, I didn't know what it was. I was living in Gordon.
To the Masters.
Yeah, I did something good for somebody in the Army. It was an award. It's like, hey,
is this during
Fort Gordon.
Basic?
Or... No, this is after basic, but it was during that advanced training, and I don't even remember what I did, but I got free tickets, and I was like, I don't want these. Anybody want these? Everybody's like, yeah, I'll go. I wish I would have. Now I didn't know.
Jeez, yeah. Tickets to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a Seinfeld episode where he's trying to get rid of tickets to the Super Bowl. All right, let's see. We got a group of environmentalists. They're filing lawsuits against the U.S. Forest Service because they're opening tracts of land in the Tongass National Forest to logging, and they're saying that they don't know what the impact is going to be, so they shouldn't do it. But I don't know. There's a bunch of wood there that can be regrown, and somebody wants to cut it down and use it. And I tell you what, if they want to know where to log, they need to do it in California. They need to...
It's funny you're talking about that.
They need to manage those forests in California and log some of it to cut down on these wildfires.
Liberals won't have it.
No. It has to be exactly as if man never lived on Earth. As if we're not part of the Earth. And
if that were true, if they really believed that, then they would let us burn it down even more, because natural fires would have happened many, many times over if it wasn't for man there putting them out.
Right.
If you truly want to get out of the way, then you need to let that thing burn sometimes.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it. Or log it. That's an alternative.
Yeah. So have you heard about Michael Behenna? I think that's how to pronounce it. Behenna, American soldier convicted of killing an Iraqi prisoner in 2008.
Oh, yeah.
So
he was just
pardon.
Didn't Trump just was it a pardon? I don't think it's is it a pardon?
It says pardon. Pardoned by President Trump.
Good. I couldn't remember. Yes, I know who you're talking about. I remember the story. I was disgusted by it. I remember the story.
Jason was in Iraq.
But I mean, I didn't. But
you didn't kill any prisoners, did you?
No, I didn't kill any prisoners. But he wasn't he interrogating him or something, and then supposedly the prisoner attacked him. Right? Is that the story?
I don't even know the story.
Does it say anything about that? I'm pretty sure that's what happened. So he was interrogating this prisoner. I guess trying to get information about IEDs or another attack or whatever, and basically he had this prisoner, and I mean, don't go. You have to do you don't want to go into detail, but you had to do things that were uncomfortable for the prisoner if you're trying to get information. So he had like this prisoner naked and like roped up or something like that, and then the prisoner somehow got the better of him and turned on him, and he had to end up killing him.
Really?
And that's where.
And that's why he had to go to jail.
And that's why he had to go to jail.
That's insane.
I know, and I don't know every detail. I wasn't there, but still, it makes me sick. We train these guys. Yeah, we train these guys to go over and fight a war and kill people, and then we put them in prison for killing people. It makes me. Anyway.
So he's free. Donald Trump invited him to dinner.
Good.
Yeah,
that's cool.
We got there was a shooting in Douglas County, Colorado. Apparently 2 suspects are in custody. It was a school shooting, and they were having some kind of vigil for let's see, how many people were killed? 1 person killed, only 1 person killed, 8 people injured, and they were having some kind of vigil for the boy who was killed, and I guess people got up there and tried to do their political thing with the Second Amendment, and a bunch of students walked out on it over the politicization of it.
Over them politicizing it? Okay.
Yeah,
well, that's cool.
So that was good.
Yeah.
Both Attorney General William Barr and Donald Trump Jr. were both subpoenaed. And let's see, William Barr was held in contempt by the United States House Committee on the Judiciary.
Right.
They're going to have a full House vote, I guess, soon enough to see if he's held in contempt, which I don't know if that even matters. And now they're trying to subpoena Donald Trump Jr., and I believe Trump is using executive privilege and saying, no, he doesn't have to go. It's stupid. It's over. Guys, let it go.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
You get tired of hearing about it.
Right. And they're not going to stop. And it's like, look, you lost the election. I understand fighting policy, you know? I mean, their constituents voted them in to try to do certain things, and I can understand doing certain things. But they're fighting the man. They're fighting the election. The man that we elected, that's what they're fighting. And it's like, no, this is BS. You want to play politics and try to keep him from lowering taxes or whatever other weird things that you think are bad for the country. But to fight him himself and try to destroy him, it's getting stupid.
Going directly against the people's will.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
We elected him. Yeah. We won him. Leave him alone. Let him do his thing. North Korea's acting.
Yeah, I saw that. Didn't they shoot a missile or something?
Well, it's an unidentified projectile right now. They shot a missile like last week, and this week they shot something, we don't know what. And South Korea's getting angry about it. We seized a North Korean merchant ship because we suspected it of violating sanctions, and I think we have it now, and I'm not sure what's going to happen there. But you know, Trump's not moving on these sanctions, so
good.
We'll
it's time to just put this to bed.
Yeah, it's been going on for more than 50 years.
Right.
So the U.S. House of Representatives voted to overturn Donald Trump's move on the Affordable Care Act. I think he did something to give states more control over pre-existing conditions so that they didn't have to follow certain federal laws.
Right.
The idea was to give more people the kind of help they need. And I don't know the specifics of it, but the House has voted to overturn that, and I guess it'll go to the Senate and die there. So it's pretty much they're not doing anything. It does whatever they didn't do anything. We are increasing tariffs on China because they did not.
I saw that.
Yeah, I think for the first time he really explained it. He explained it without hype, and I think he's doing a better job to educate people on how this stuff works. Because as in a conservative, I would right away say, no, taxes are bad. We should be against them. For some reason, I'm okay with it when Trump does it.
Well, these aren't taxes, though, and that's, there's a lot of people who don't understand it, and that's That's a big problem. That's why it's been so bad for so long. That's why our trade deficit was in shape. I mean, we had such a trade deficit for so many years. It's about time someone is standing up and actually doing something.
And the thing that Trump did first, he made it possible for manufacturers to come back. Then now he's making it possible for manufacturers to sell their goods. I mean, this is win-win for America.
Yeah. It is, and I don't have a problem with trade. Don't get me wrong. Trade is important. I want to trade with China, but only when it's fair. I mean, when we're letting them, you know, when we're pumping billions of dollars into their economy, and they're only pumping in millions into ours, there's a problem there. You know, it's a deficit that we have to fix. You know, and that's, you know, trade should be fair. Period. And that's all Trump is doing.
Yeah. So the United States House Committee on Ways and Means subpoenaed, they're trying to get Trump's tax returns for the past 6 years. I don't know why.
Oh, yeah.
I
don't either.
Did you see the New York Times story about him taking a $1 billion loss? Trying to point out that he's not that good of a businessman because they found some tax return stuff from the 80s, I think, where he took a $1 billion loss. So they're trying to say he's not that rich. But this is recycled news.
What do they care?
They said that. They said that back during the campaign. I remember.
In 2016, I remember hearing that. I think they just I do. I think
they're acting like this is new news.
Mean, they literally recycle it, right?
Yeah,
that's what they do. And the morons who watch that news they just eat it up.
They're getting excited again. Like, oh, wow, I didn't know that.
They'll tweet it out. Look, I knew Trump was a loser. I knew Trump was a bad businessman. I knew Trump was a racist. You know, it's just the same thing over and over again. It's silly.
You know, the funny thing is, I heard on like one of the premieres of his show, what's that show he had where he said you're fired? The Apprentice.
I think it's called You're Fired.
No, it's called The Apprentice. I said, you're fired. He announced that he had lost $1 billion and had to make a comeback.
Yeah.
I mean, he admitted that. I don't know why anyone's even talking about it.
I don't remember, but yeah, I'm not surprised.
This is some lazy journalism.
Stupid. I mean, it's when you're focused on one subject, that's all you can do is start recycling.
Yeah. So we got some jihadi gunmen burning down Catholic churches during a mass and killed 6 people, including the priest, in Dablo, Burkina Faso. I don't know, somewhere in Africa. I don't know. We got. You know what? This is one of a bunch of other stories. There's stories all over these Muslims stepping up the attacks on the Catholic Church. It's just
and not many people are reporting them either. Unfortunately,
yeah, it's sad.
You almost have to dig to find these stories, but it's happening a lot.
Yeah, and it's getting worse. And
I wish these journalists would spend time doing that.
Yeah, instead of trying to find Trump's tax returns like anyone gives a darn.
Right.
All right, that's all I got.
All right, I've got a couple things here. It's funny you were talking about California and lumber because this one story is couple ordered to pay nearly $600,000 after uprooting a 180-year-old oak tree.
An oak tree.
This couple moved, from their property. They moved to a new house, and they liked this tree so much they decided to try to move it. Well, it ended up dying. They failed. They uprooted it. They went down. I guess they moved something like 3,000 cubic yards of dirt with it, but the thing still died. So evidently, this tree is named some sort of historical, I don't know, conservation,
some kind of protection
item. Yeah, it's protected, and they were fined $586,000 for killing that tree.
That is insane.
That's just nuts. That's crazy.
Like, they could have killed a person and gotten less.
Right. And 180 years is old, but that's not, when it comes to trees, that's not that old. Don't we aren't some of those redwoods like
a
thousands of years old? Yeah, and I think the oldest tree we know of is like 9,000 years old or something like that. I mean, there are much older trees out there.
Right. And it's just an oak tree.
It's an oak tree. Yeah, it isn't it like it's an endangered species or anything. I just think that's silly.
I would say the stupidity started in spending that much money to move a tree, but then the state had to join in and make even bigger deal of it. The whole thing's stupid.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah.
I don't know where do people come up with these
that
things.
Family.
I have a lot of bushes in my yard that I want to get rid of, but I'm not going to uproot them. I'm just going to cut them down.
Just going to cut them down. Burn them.
Yeah.
So, Indian Army believes they've found Yeti footprints in the Himalayas. Yeti, like Bigfoot footprints in the Himalayas. Yeah, there's they don't say a lot about it, but they were evidently...
Is this like... I wonder if this is like a guy who was in the army found it, or like
the official government mountaineer. No, it was a group. It was a mountaineering engineering expedition, like an army mountaineering, like a group.
Huh.
You have infantry, you have mountain infantry, basically. Mountaineering expedition team. They came across these prints and took pictures of them. They are supposedly 32 inches by 15 inch, and
that's almost as big as your feet.
I know. I was going to say, I haven't been up there, but I think
Jason was walking around out there. That's what it was. I didn't know you ever gone to India.
Those are in my backyard.
That's like a baby Yeti.
Let's see. Okay, so here's the last one. Mom accuses Southwest of name shaming, laughing at daughter's unusual name. So,
what was her name?
It's spelled ABCDE. ABC. So write it down. ABCDE. She pronounced it supposedly Absidy.
Absidy? Absidy.
Yeah.
ABC.
Absidy.
D.
Absidy.
No, she's pronouncing it wrong. That's what it is.
I know she is. So the gate agent just couldn't stop laughing and even took a picture of it on the boarding pass.
Yeah.
And so the mom got all up in arms and started all kind of, she complained to Southwest. And Southwest ended up apologizing and promising that their agents are going to go through special training and
special training. Name
don't laugh at people's names.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, if you name it ABCDE, that's just crazy.
Well, it's like, the thing is, if you saw that, your friends are not going to believe it, so you take a picture of the pass, and it's like, no, this is the person.
Right. This really is what happened.
And then
I would have taken a picture of it too.
And record the mother who can't pronounce the name correctly. Absidy. No, that's not how you say that.
Absidy.
Stupid idiot.
It's Absidy.
Absidy.
All right, that's all I got.
All right, well, think about what we said, and we'll see you next week on a podcast about Catholic things.
Circle the beads.
Circle the beads.
What do you say?
Yeah, that's
Circle
it.
the beads.
That's circle the beads. And I don't know who's coming back next week. I don't know if it's you or Danny or what. I don't even know where he is.
Is he out this weekend?
I don't know. He just said he couldn't record. I don't know where he is. So.
Oh, okay.
All right, well,
we'll see.
Thanks.
Maybe we'll do a threesome coming up or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You know what this podcast is about?
That?
Yeah, we didn't talk about threesomes. That's also a mortal sin, guys.
Sorry,
You're not allowed to have
I had
threesomes.
to throw that out there. I had to throw it out. All right,
All right.
Thanks for
Thanks.
stopping by.